Good morning, evening, afternoon to all the attendees who are joining us live from different time zones across the world. I am Varija, convener, National Ability Summit, an initiative by Varija Life. I'm an Indian Asian woman with brown eyes, wheatish skin tone, and long brown straight hair. I'm wearing a red jacket with a white background with the logos of Varija Life and National Ability Summit on the left and the right top corner of the screen. We at Varija Life initiated a conversation around investments and funding before the first edition of NAS in 2020, where we invited startups to participate in a competition called StarAble in association with Startup India, a government body. Now, what was so special about this competition? This was specific to startups for and by people with disabilities. And the jury were 14 individual investors, venture capitalists, and investment firms. That's when we realized how investors are missing the bus in the disability sector. While there's an absolute need for greater services and innovations in the disability sector, I think there is even a bigger need to make the existing innovations available for those who need them the most. I'm honored to introduce you to the moderator of this session on investments in the disability sector, Mr. Hardeep Rai, Group CEO, Kaleidoscope Group of Companies joining from UK. While he was the jury for the competition last year, he's now an integral part of our core team and mission of inclusion at Varija Life. With a vast experience in investment management, private equity, and venture capital, Hardeep is also the founder of and managing director of Kaleidoscope Investments that focuses on investing in disabled people that have great ideas. A very warm welcome to you, Hardeep. Hardeep, we have observed that mainstream investors are completely oblivious to the innovations and services being offered in the disability sector. And this may include old age disability too. Do you think they are missing the bus somewhere?
Yes, I do, Varija, and thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. My name is Hardeep Rai from Kaleidoscope Investments. I sit here before you today feeling very proud and very honored that we have a stage to talk about this. So Varija, thank you and Varija Life for enabling us to be able to share very important messages across the world today. So I sit before you, I am wearing a black V-neck jumper, a white shirt and a red tie. And behind me, I have a picture of my beautiful little son, Ishan Rai, who is the apple of my eye and who is the reason that Kaleidoscope Investments exists today. So to answer your question, Varija, yes, very much so. I believe investors are missing the bus of disabled entrepreneurship. But hopefully after listening to the session today and to some of the panelists, people will have a different mindset and a different understanding of what disabled entrepreneurship is really all about and the opportunities that exist herewith. So let me introduce my panel. So my panel, first of all, is consisting of 2 disabled entrepreneurs and 1 investor. So first, I will introduce Dr.Jenny of eScent. I will then introduce Raju, who has recently published an amazing book. And I'm going to introduce Rizwan Rahim, who is one of our Kaleidoscope's investors. I'm very, very proud to have a combination of people like this on this panel, because actually I think what would be fantastic is for all of us to listen to 2 real life entrepreneurs, hear their journey, understand what they've been through, listen to some of their challenges, and then actually for all of us to think, why did they have to go through this? Why could things not have been done differently? Why did they not have the opportunities they actually deserve to have? And Rizwan, I'm so grateful that you're with us today. I mean, our friendship goes back almost 4 years now. And you know, you've watched me grow, and we've sort of you've watched us nurture our business over the last 3 to 4 years. So it will be wonderful to hear some of your perspectives as an investor in this community as well. So without too much further ado, what I'm not going to do is read off a little bio of each person. I'm going to go to each of the panelists and give them 2 to 3 minutes to just introduce themselves briefly. And Dr. Jenny, I will begin with you, if I may.
Thank you, Hardeep. It's a pleasure to meet everyone. So my name's Jenny Tilotson, and I'm an entrepreneur working on a deep tech-based company that's creating eScent. My background is actually an academic, but I do have a bipolar diagnosis, so I've really struggled with mental health for many, many years. Actually, I was diagnosed sort of 30 years ago. But I was an academic for many years. I worked at Central St Martin's. I have a PhD from the Royal College of Art. So I've got a sort of very impressive career, but I've really struggled with mental health and getting my ideas off the ground. But what I've basically developed is a new way of delivering fragrances that are worn close to the nose that are triggered by various different sensors and triggers, depending on stress. And I've very much invented this for myself, because I was looking for new ways of releasing scent to help with stress. So I mean, actually very importantly, because of COVID, I won an Innovate UK grant to develop a smart mask, and I've actually got that here. So that's this is a smart mask that releases scent to reduce stress, but it could also be an antiviral for frontline workers. And so that's one of my most recent projects, and that's very much a COVID pivot, if you like. Before that, I was very much based in the perfumery and the fashion world. I mean, I have a PhD, as I said, from the Royal College of Art. I was an academic at Central St Martin's, but I have really struggled with mental health and anxiety mainly. I mean, with bipolar, one of the hardest things to deal with is actually anxiety, being able to control that, social anxiety, OCD traits. And that's really, really hindered my career for many, many years, I have to say. But it's really, since COVID, I've been able to, well, with this most recent project, that I've really been able to get things off the ground and talk about my story, because beforehand, I really struggled due to stigma, due to self-doubt, you know, all the problems that come with bipolar. So it's, as I said, it's actually just in the last 18 months I've been able to really get everything off the ground and to start to tell my story. I also won a Stelios Award as well, which is I was one of the winners about 18 months ago. So that was kind of actually the start of this journey, which I think is really important as a former academic. That was actually, you know, I got to quite a high level. I was a reader in sensory fashion at Central St Martin's. I was a visiting scholar at the University of Cambridge. I'm working very closely with a psychiatrist at the University of Cambridge, so I'm very well affiliated to lots of high-level people. But the bottom line is, the authentic story, if you like, is that I really struggle with anxiety and various things that go with that. I hope that's...
Thank you, Jenny. I think you've set the scene in terms of honesty and openness straight away. And if you see my eyes coming off the screen, I'm typing questions. So thank you, Jenny. Excellent opening. Amo, over to you, sir.
Morning, everyone. My name's Amo Raju. I'm sitting in my conservatory. It's a blurred background simply because it's a bit of a mess in the background, so I'm not letting you see the state the dog has left it in before he went for a walk. I'm wearing a striped jacket with a white shirt today. I am clean shaven. Normally I have a beard, but something went wrong while I was shaping it, so I took it all off. So I am 53 years old. I have cerebral palsy, which is a form of cerebral palsy called diplegia, which affects the right side of my body, mainly making it weak. Only recently I have started talking openly about my relationship, and I call it a relationship, with mental health. Sometimes it gets the better of me and sometimes I come out on top. And that's all been put into a book which I self-published around 2 weeks ago, which is now, shameless plug coming, available on Amazon for purchase, called Walk Like a Man, which focuses on particularly how men struggle to talk openly to anybody about the issues which affect them on a day-to-day basis. My background, for the last 27 years, have run a charity, some social enterprises in the Midlands in the UK called Disability Direct. To cut a long story short, since 2004, I've generated £25 million in profits, which I've donated every single penny to charity. But it's shown that disabled people, which is obviously the theme today, can do it for themselves and can find gaps in the market and use their expertise in disability and social care and health to sell to the wider community. I'm married, 3 children and 2 grandchildren. I look after today around 51 paid staff, 30 volunteers, and 4 companies if I include my own personal company. I'm also a consultant and mentor to disabled people and entrepreneurs of the next generation.
Fantastic introduction, Amo. Thank you so much. I hadn't realized that you have 2 grandchildren. You don't look old enough to be a grandfather yet. Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for that intro. And over to you, Rizwan.
Yeah, thank you, Hardeep. So my name is Rizwan Rahim. I'm of Indian origin with brown skin. I'm currently bald. I'm 45 years of age. I'm wearing a white long sleeve shirt with a blue blazer. I actually come from very different backgrounds of Indian origin, but my parents are from Kenya and Tanzania. And I was raised a bit in Africa and eventually grew up in France, where I learned to speak French and English, and eventually studied in the US and worked in the US in consulting firms. And I was very much driven by a desire to create a company that would have a very positive and measurable social impact. So long story short, I ended up on the island of Mauritius in Africa, which is kind of the region of my roots, where I rolled out an internet company there at the time when there was just dial-up speeds. So the impact I wanted to have was to help speed up the access to high-speed internet, because the faster the speed, in a sense, and the lower cost of internet, the more access to knowledge you have, and the more access you have to greater opportunities in your life across the globe. So we rolled out that network and eventually sold the internet company, after which I worked with my father in his company, which he had built over 30 years. And we eventually sold that company due to heightened competition in the markets, at which point we set up what we call a family office, which basically invests the money that we got from the sale of the original first generation company. And we're rolling out what we call an investment portfolio, which is a mix of investments in equities, real estate, and venture capital. And I'm very proud to say that we are a purpose-driven family office. We want to basically help improve the world, which means helping people fulfill their potential while also protecting the planet. And as part of that, purpose and agenda, we're very proud to have invested with Kaleidoscope in one of their ventures, which is recruiting for disabled people in the UK.
Thank you, Rizwan. That's great. And I love what you said about purpose there, because I think we completely, as Kaleidoscope, we completely align to purpose. And I think, everyone here today is all about talking about purpose in this disability world. So thank you very much to the panelists for that fantastic introduction. My first question then really is going to be around just setting the scene and answering the question why we think there is such a challenge in this marketplace. Why is it that people are not understanding that investing in people with disabled entrepreneurs with great ideas is a good thing. So perhaps Jenny and Amo, I can come to the both of you first to sort of share some ideas around why you think there is that challenge in the first instance. And Amo, if I begin with you, sir.
Okay, I mean, I think any investor, when they're investing in something, there's always an element of risk against potential outcome and success. And when we look at the narrative around disabled people, the story around disabled people, the media perception of disabled people, there's always there's more negative portrayal of disabled people than positive. So when you're about to invest in them, that fear of risk seems to be higher, and it's totally unwarranted. But it's, again, that may play a part. And I'm not just saying this out of personal experience, but a lot of disabled people who I've worked with and supported over the years say that to me, that their initial challenge is to persuade them that they are ready for self-employment, as are their non-disabled peers. So that's an immediate barrier that they have to try and to win over before they've even presented their product or service to the investor. It's making them understand. Somebody who has got mental health problems or a mild learning difficulty or any sort of physical impairment or even sight loss, the reason they want to be self-employed is because they have a self-belief to some extent. But as I say, the main thing that will put them at a perceived disadvantage is that conversation, that initial conversation of making that person understand, a panel understand, or a bank understand that they are investable as an individual. Forget the business, forget the service or the product, as an individual. That's something that I've come across a lot.
This is Hardeep. Thank you, Amo. Jenny, I'd like to ask you the same question, if I may. You may have a similar answer, but I thought it would be interesting just from your experience.
Yes, hello. So this is Jenny. So with my experience, certainly in my early days of being an entrepreneur, because I filed patents quite early on, I was always told, don't show the emotional side. And this was, and I always struggled anyway with self-doubt and stigma and various issues. So I was very much didn't really tell the backstory, and it was always just hidden, even though that was very much the drive behind it. So yes, there are the risks with the technology development, but I was always told, you shouldn't talk about the emotional side. But investors don't like emotion. But in fact, what I'm developing very much involves emotion and the story. And in recent, well, the last year, I'm finding that the investors that I'm speaking to really like the vulnerability and the authentic side of that. So yeah, I mean, to me, it's two-way really. There was the issue with stigma and mental health and being comfortable to tell my story, but also being very much, finding the right sort of people. So yeah, so it's a sort of ongoing learning journey that I'm on at the moment, to be honest. Yeah.
This is Hardeep. Rizwan, I'm just going to pull out something that Jenny said about investors not liking to invest in emotion. Do you have a comment on that or a thought on that at all?
Yeah, this is Rizwan speaking. Yeah, for sure. I actually wanted to comment on both what Jenny and Amo said. Maybe I'll just start, if you don't mind, with what Amo was saying about risk. And it's true that investors are always looking for the highest amount of return with the least amount of risk, which for them implies both trying to do things which they feel are predictable, which are consistent, and that means that they don't really want to get out of their comfort zone, whether it's in terms of the strategy that they adopt, but also the teams they employ. And the problem is that we're so busy now with our lives, hounded by email and social media and all of that we don't really take the time to think and read. And as an example, when we think of researching this topic, There's examples, for example, there are professors at Harvard that have done studies about what really gives you the highest elements of return. And they've discovered that it is diversity. And when we talk about diversity, we're not just talking about gender or people from different backgrounds or ethnicities. I think, you know, we have to expand the tent for the community, and that definitely includes people with disability. People with disability are creative, they're very smart. As we can see with Amma and Jenny, they're people who are very accomplished, who have great degrees, and they're just people, and they deserve to be in company. They deserve to be listened to. They deserve to be given a chance and an opportunity to fulfill their potential, whether it's in a company or to build their own company or to create something wonderful. And just coming back to what Jenny said, on the emotional side, I completely agree with what she said. You know, companies tend to be, we tend to believe that we have to act a bit like robots and just be very rational thinkers in companies and never bring in the emotion. But the reality is we're human beings, and a great part of who we are is our emotions. And in fact, we translate the conclusions we derive in life come through our thoughts and also through our emotions. So, you know, in our company, I encourage people to express themselves, to express their emotions, and I tell them emotions are not something taboo or wrong. If you feel angry or frustrated, or you have to manage your emotions, in terms of not letting it come out as an excessive outburst, obviously to disrupt an environment. But you should express your emotions, how you feel, whether you're upset, frustrated, sad, and the team should be there to support you, to listen to you. You know, I think that's what it means to build a community. And if you have a team that trusts you in that sense, then I think you're more likely to succeed as well.
This is Hardeep. Rizwan, thank you for that. I think my question for you next is, how do we clone you and put you around a few countries across the world? We need a lot more people that think like you, especially in positions of investment. Amo, you had your hand up just then. Were you going to say something?
Yes, thank you. Amo Raju speaking again. I just remembered an example which I wanted to share. In 1999, I could foresee how social care in the UK was going, the provision of social care. So I came up with a business idea of, so in a nutshell, disabled people were soon to be asked to employ their own carers, which is a scheme called direct payments in the UK. And I could see that they needed a fast, cheap, efficient mechanism for someone to do their payroll and do all their inland revenue calculations, etc. So I went to the bank and said, I was broke at the time. So I went to the bank and I said, I've got an idea. Here's the business plan. Do you want to invest in me? Give me a business loan. And literally within, I would say, 3 hours, they'd come back with a decision. I only just got back home before I got the phone call to say, sorry, we're not able to do this. And the reason was, it was more about me as a disabled person, not having business experience or a number of reasons. And I could read between the lines, a lot of it was that they didn't believe that a disabled person could run a business. And just to move the clock forward 25 years now, I run a payroll service which employs 15 staff. And it has generated probably around, I'd say about 15 to 20 million pounds over those years. And I don't know how to do payroll. I'll admit it. I had the idea and the vision, and I had to do it myself. And that is your classic example of how disabled people don't have that belief invested in them. It's a lot. They have to have the self-belief, but no one actually wants to support them through their idea. So I mean, that's 20 plus years ago, 30 years ago. But things haven't changed that much since.
This is Hardeep. Thank you, Amo. I think you raised a really valid point there. And probably the most scary thing you said is that things haven't changed very much. And so that leads me to my next question, which is, what do we need to do to change things? So I say this first to you, Jenny, and Amo as entrepreneurs. So we know what the challenge is. We've set the scene with the challenge and the perceptions, but what are we going to do to change this? You know, from my point of view, I see the next decade as a very, very pivotal time. I see change in the market. I see investors beginning to think about diversity, beginning to think about disability. But what can we be doing as entrepreneurs to help to give them that confidence that now is the right time to start investing in disabled entrepreneurs?
So,
Jenny, let me go
this is
to
Jenny
you first.
speaking. Hi, this is Jenny speaking again. So, I mean, very much for me, I'm a neurodiverse entrepreneur, and that's very much, you know, a new way of thinking. So, I mean, it's really helping people like myself building, as you say, trust. I mean, trust is a major part of this, building the team around me so that I can bloom. I mean, I kind of was blooming in other ways, but because I had this backstory and I always struggled to tell it because, you know, there's a sort of element of truth. So yeah, I mean, it's really being able to support people like me that think differently, you know, like many others that are in my position, are very creative, have much to offer, but just need that support around me. So I mean, that's top of my list, really, you know, as a sort of neurodiverse person. Yeah.
So I have another question for you, Jenny, actually, if you don't mind my asking.
Yeah.
So you were very honest about the different types of conditions that you've been through or situations that you've been through with regards to your own health and mental health. So there could be an investor listening to you that might think that sounds a little bit worrying from an investment point of view, and that sounds a bit high risk. Whereas now you're, you know, as you said, for the last 18 months, 2 years, you've been in quite a different place. How do you think we can give investors that confidence to feel that even if you do go through a period of difficulty, it's okay because the business can actually still survive, and people without disabilities go through periods of difficulty in businesses. So why should that be any different with a disabled entrepreneur? I mean, what would you say to them, Jenny, about that?
Well, hi, it's Jenny again. I mean, I'd be able to show them what I've achieved to date, really. I mean, you know, I have 6 patents, 4 of those are awarded, 2 are in the US. I'm building a platform technology. I have prototypes. I'm working with experts in the field. I have the University of Cambridge psychiatry department behind me. So it's very much being able to show these investors what I have to offer and the vision of the future. I mean, as I said, I have these patents and this platform technology that I'm building that's okay. It could go into masks, it could go into the whole fashion world, which is where I'm from, but also particularly for mental health. I mean, that's where my passion lies. And in fact, I'm a Churchill Fellow as well. I didn't even mention that. I'm a Churchill Fellow, and the project was very much about building this platform technology to break down stigma. I mean, this is my big passion and where I want to take it. So, I mean, I would be able to show the investors what I've developed. Where, you know, I've been able to protect the idea. I've been able to attract, you know, some serious VCs that are interested in the future. Maybe not now, but certainly, you know, they're on the horizon. And the backstory is just part of it. So my issue really with my blips is this I have a mild bipolar that brings in mood swings to the extent where it affects my confidence. That's all it is. It's, you know, sometimes I'm less confident, other times I'm more confident. So it's being able to show them that this is part of the story. And that's why I want to use Scent. I mean, Scent can really help with confidence. That's why I'm building this new platform technology that releases the Scent depending on your stress levels, confidence levels. So that's part of the story. And that's why I've been able to protect this with the patent. So I would show that to the investors. I think that would be my answer.
I think that's an amazing answer, Jenny. And I think you've hit the rail right on the head. You've said a lot of things. I think achievement, what you've been able to achieve, to demonstrate, very powerful. You talk about thinking differently, very powerful. And I think to entrepreneurs that are out there that are thinking about getting investment in this space, you know, producing something that's a proof of concept or demonstrating it as something that you can show to an investor that demonstrates achievement is really powerful, really important, rather than just an idea. And I think, Jenny, you've always done that very, very well. You've always had a prototype, you've always been able to show something. And I know more recently you've managed to get a lot of media coverage as well, which is fantastic. Yes. So that's brilliant. And Amo, if I could come to you, I think what strikes me about you is the longevity of what you've been doing and not giving up, and the fact that you've been going for 25, 30 years. I mean, I've been going for 7 years in the entrepreneurship space of disability, and that feels like a lifetime. So for you, having been going for 25, 30 years, you know, that should give an investor confidence that actually you haven't walked away. You've had the resilience to continue to fight this battle, to continue to succeed. Where have you managed to find that strength? You know, what continues to drive you as an entrepreneur?
I think that's a good question. Now, this is one of the reasons that I was asked to write a book, because people said that the journey that I've been on might inspire others. And I mean, I went from being homeless to being fairly well settled now. And I've doubted myself. Like any other person in business, you start to doubt yourself. You have really, really strong moments, and then you have very weak, rocky, wobbly moments where you really think, this is all going wrong, something's not right. But again, as Jenny has mentioned as well, mental health played a big problem with me, a big role in my journey, because the whole concept for me, and as I said, I called it a relationship earlier on, is for me to recognize that it's there, that when I'm down, I need to reach out to somebody and say something isn't quite right. I'm not firing on all 4 cylinders. Something needs to, whether I need, and 9 times out of 10, it was just the fact that I needed to talk to someone, and they just gave me that little injection of self-belief again. And I think I mentioned to you before, Hardeep, years ago, I ran a project which was funded by the European Social Fund about getting disabled entrepreneurs, getting their business or service or product onto the market. And they all had fantastic services and products, but the only support they needed is someone to bounce off every now and then. And I ended up becoming a mentor to literally, I think it was about, at one stage, I had about 8 people that I was constantly knocking on my door, doubting themselves every now and then. There's nothing else. And 99% of the time, their doubt was unwarranted. It was just the fact that they were having wobbles because somebody had said something, or someone had done something, a rival had done something, and those are the same kind of fears that any entrepreneur have, disabled or not. But with disabled people, you have that little extra doubt that because we've been, when I say we, disabled people, we've had it installed in us since birth or since that onset of disability, that we're not as good as mainstream society. And so you have this constant arm wrestle going on in that aspect. And to your original question about what can be done by entrepreneurs, I think what's missing in society are the role models, the success stories. You get it all the time on switch on any TV channel, and you'll see success stories of people who have done it. They've made their million, and they're living the life of luxury and enjoying life because they've worked hard. But you don't see disabled people's stories in a similar way. But for that to happen, there are disabled people like me and Jenny and others out there who have achieved things, but we're not good at shouting about it. And that, when we do shout about it, that's what inspires others, that well, he or she has done that, and I've got an issue similar to them. Maybe I can do it too. And that's really missing. So those entrepreneurs that are already out there, we need to get vocal. We need to get quite savvy with sharing our stories, because that's what's going to inspire other people. And that's what I think is missing at the moment.
No, we can't hear you.
You're on mute.
Sorry. This is Hardeep. Thank you, Amo. That was excellent. I think some really good points there. And I love what you said about entrepreneurs becoming more vocal and there being more case studies. And the funny thing is, in the disability community, we hear about these case studies, but the outside world don't hear about the case studies. And that's the biggest problem. Rizwan, I'm going to come to you. I'm sure you've probably got a couple of things you'd like to comment on from what Jenny and Amo have just said.
Yeah, thank you, Hardeep. This is Rizwan. Yeah, I think I had a couple of thoughts. The first is, in the context of COVID, we did all kind of stay at home, but at the same time, I feel like COVID may have made us all feel part of our greater humanity and more connected to each other, because we developed this kind of extra empathy about the suffering of others. We know there were people who died in hospital or who suffered from COVID, especially elderly people. And we knew that if they didn't get better, then we wouldn't get better either. So we felt that the solution had to encompass everybody in our humanity. And I think we need to extend that empathy beyond COVID, and start thinking about how we bring, again, everyone under the tent and give everybody a fair opportunity, regardless of their background, their gender or potential disability. And one thing I would say about that is that capitalism is very much driven by returns, right? But the interesting thing that people have to wake up to is that if you look at the next generation of Gen Zs, and now I think the next generation are called Gen As, I believe, is that they are very much purpose-driven. They're very different from older generations. And what does it mean to be purpose-driven? They think about when they buy something, they think of, has that company produced this good in an environmentally friendly way with the least carbon emissions possible? Have they treated their teams well? Are they making a social impact? And equally importantly, they also look for, does this company represent diversity? And represents my diversity as a consumer. And that includes, again, it could be gender, it could be ethnicity, and it includes disability as well. Has this company given a fair chance to everybody? Have they given a chance to people with disabilities to grow to their full potential? So I would say that companies need to wake up to the fact that their next generation of consumers are demanding more equality, more fairness, more inclusion.
This is Hardeep. Thank you, Rizwan. Very, very well made points, especially the point about Gen A and being more purpose-driven. And I think what I have experienced actually through some of the other businesses that we're involved in is exactly what you just said, Rizwan, is that companies now are beginning to think differently about how they can retain their staff. They're beginning to think differently about diversity and inclusion. Mental health is featured on a huge level at the moment. And it's interesting, Amo, you've spoken about mental health. Jenny, you've touched on mental health. And something I don't speak a lot about is I have my own mental health issues post-eScent as well, through a very, very difficult period. So I think that destabilization in mental health can change your life in an instant. And that's the thing. It starts over a period of time. And Jenny, as a medic, I know that you'll know this a lot better than me, but it starts over a period of time, but when it hits you very suddenly, and you're almost incapacitated. And I think one of the ways that we as entrepreneurs, I think, can try and give investors more confidence is by having a team of people around us that can help us to pick up the pieces, right? So, Amo, exactly as you just said, a sounding board. I think that's very, very important. So when you're an entrepreneur out there and you're thinking about your business, sometimes being a lone wolf or that entrepreneur on your own is high risk for any investor, irrespective of whether or not you have a disability. And if you add disability on top of that, then that actually probably makes it even more for high risk, because the truth is, a lot of us with disabilities, we do have limitations when it comes to the amount or the method or the flexibility in the way that we work. But it's okay to have limitations, right? You know, companies have to understand that their employees can have limitations sometimes, and that's okay. I think we have to get away from this mindset that every entrepreneur has to look perfect, has to speak perfectly, has to be perfect. We need to understand that they can be very different. And I think in Jenny and Amma, what both of you have said about entrepreneurs and the, you know, thinking differently and resilience and everything else, those are very, very powerful themes, very powerful themes. So Rizwan, I want to come back to you as being what I consider to be someone as a thought leader in terms of, you know, creating a way forward and thinking differently. How do you think we could engage the investment community better to think more about investing in people with disabilities from different sectors? And I want to say one thing here. I'm not just talking about tech, because I'm very aware that there's plenty of VCs that are out there now that are looking for tech-enabled disability devices or accessibility devices. But I think it's a lot bigger than that. It's about changing the mindset. It's about thinking purposefully. How do you think, as investors, we can help to change mindsets, Rizwan, in your opinion?
Thank you, Hardeep. This is Rizwan. I just wanted to first comment on what you just talked about, resilience. You know, when as an investor, one of the things we look at, and especially for example in venture capital, is we have a whole criteria of things that we evaluate before we make an investment. And one of the key elements of our criteria is the team. You know, who is the team? And then when we dig deeper, we ask ourselves, you know, have the co-founders, for example, been together for a long time? You know, how competent is the team? Have they had previous successes? And then we also ask ourselves, you know, what are their values? But also, as you mentioned, Hardeep, we ask ourselves, you know, are these people resilient? You know, how do we evaluate their resilience? You know, and then when I look at people like Jenny, who have PhDs, you know, 6 patents, affiliation with great universities, and are inventors, you know, extraordinary inventors. And I look at people like Amo, who have, you know, built 4 companies and at the same time are doing charity and philanthropy and written a book. Those are stories of incredible resourcefulness, you know, smartness, and all, but especially also resilience. You know, and one could argue that there's greater strength when people have gone through a lot of hardship in terms of feeling prejudice or having gone through great periods of self-doubt and anxiety. If they come out of that, they come out of that stronger. And so in a sense, you know, when I would look at a company, I would say, well, you know, a person who has a disability in a sense may actually be more resilient than someone else because they draw strength from what they've experienced as well. Coming back to your question about what can we do, I think you have to unfortunately, we have to talk the language of capitalism, and we have to kind of start that dialogue with enterprises. First of all, telling them that your customers, your new customers, the new generations are very purpose-driven, and they want you to be more inclusive. They want to see you give more chances to people, and you know, if we are able to make companies realize this, you know, hopefully they will change their internal, you know, HR policies and being more inclusive. And I would also throw out the gauntlet that, you know, to companies that they should, you know, it starts with a small gesture. You know, why don't you employ just one person in your team who, you know, has come out with a disability? Or why don't you have a sit down with your team and ask people, do you have a disability? Because maybe people are hiding a disability, you know, and allow them to speak about it, create structures that support that person in the company, learn about disability, be more supportive.
Excellent. Really, this is Hardeep. Excellent points, Rizwan. I was making some notes there. I love the your point about starting somewhere and having that gesture, and just even if it meant one to begin with, at least it's something to build on. And actually, Jenny, you'll probably recognize this as an academic as well, is that disclosure in companies is one of the biggest growth areas at the moment, and trying to encourage people to come forward and be honest about needing support, needing mental health, needing time off. That's why there's been an astronomical growth in these sort of anonymous advice lines that companies are bringing on board that people can use to start talking to. So I think there's some really, really valid points you made there, Rizwan. Thank you. And I would like to flip resilience back to you for a minute, and give you an example of how I, as an investee, have perceived you as an investor. Because just as you and I, our relationship was built over a 3-year period before you invested, and you maintained your resilience with us too, right? So you would have seen me be resilient, and you know why I am, because I'm driven by my son and the good Lord. You know, for me, I feel very purpose and mission driven. But you were too. You know, as an investor, you stayed and you watched and you observed, and when you felt the time was right, you then did what you did. And I think this point you make about capitalism is a very important one, because we've got to remember that we don't want people that are listening to this session to think, do a disabled person a favor and invest in them, right? Or let's just make a difference and, you know, feel that we're doing good. No, you're actually going to make money out of this, right? If you've heard from Jenny and you've heard from Amo, I think you can make a fair assumption that both of these people have been successful and will continue to be successful, and they will make money for you as an investor, and for themselves and for society as a whole, because they will do good. And I think that's a really important mindset shift, is that people need to think that actually people that think differently and that act differently, that just because they're disabled, that's an asset. And as you said, Rizwan, that resilience, when you've been through a disability and you've been through that journey, and only you within yourself know what you have to do when you wake up in the morning and when you go to sleep at night, that is what resilience is really about. So I think that the point of resilience is critical in anything to do with entrepreneurship or even employment. You know, when you're thinking about hiring a person with a disability, don't hire them because you want to do a tick box exercise. Hire them because they're actually going to add value to your business, right? That's a really important point. And one other point I would like to make is about data. We haven't spoken about the size of the market yet. Okay, so it is a fact that in our 7.3 or 7.9 billion world population, there's just under 2 billion people that are disabled. 2 billion. That's almost 1 in 4 of us. So if you think of a standard family of a parent, you know, a parent, mum and dad and 2 kids, that's 1 in 4. You could think that that's a statistic that's potentially there. And then you think about the expenditure that disabled people and their families have on products and services. Significant, right? I mean, I think the figures are over 13 trillion US dollars per year is the amount of money that disabled people and their families and friends have to spend, right? So there were studies in the UK whereby if a disabled person goes to a restaurant, typically they're going to take between 6 to 8 people with them, right? That's typically, but restaurants are not accessible. So actually, if they're missing out on money they could be making by not engaging with the disabled community. So I think these are points that are really important. And I have to be careful not to keep going off, because I think I'm very passionate about disability and there are amazing statistics. But bringing it back to timing, and I can't believe how fast time has already gone. We've only got about 10 minutes left. I think I probably want to just get some closing thoughts from everybody now around entrepreneurship and disability. We've had some fantastic anecdotes from you, Jenny, and shares. Amo, in terms of you and what you've done over the last 25, 30 years, and Rizwan, from your point of view. If I could just literally open the floor now to the 3 of you and say, what final points would any of you like to make to our listeners today? And these listeners could be disabled people that are looking upon you as being the role models, okay? They could be people that are looking for employment, They could be investors that are thinking about investing in disabled people. What sort of final messages do you think we should be leaving behind?
Feeling comfortable to tell your story, finding the right team that you can work with. I mean, that's been the most important part for me. You know, obviously there's the resilience and bouncing back. I've very much had that along the way. But yeah, so it's finding the right team that can help me. Has helped me particularly.
This is Hardeep. And Jenny, on that
sorry,
point about...
this is Jenny. I forgot to say it. That's Jenny speaking.
Okay, don't worry. And Jenny, on that point about team, because, you know, Rizwan said something very important earlier, which is they look at teams as well, right? So
yeah.
How, because, and a lot of disabled people might be thinking that it's very difficult to build teams, or how do you find the right people to trust? A lot of people with disabilities that I've personally met, and we've met over 1,200 in the last 7 years, have trust issues. They don't like to share their ideas because they feel very, some of them feel very paranoid that someone might. How do you think we could overcome that issue, Jenny?
Gosh, I mean, you know, for me, I need to find a CEO that understands sort of mental health issues. So, I mean, it's being able to, tell your story comfortably. You know, I think that's certainly for myself. It's being able to tell the backstory. And
okay,
I hope that helps.
Thank you, Jenny. Amo, any final reflections from you?
I've got a few, and Rizwan said it earlier as well. In that, companies, the customers are getting a little bit more savvy about where they want to spend and what the and Rizwan said it earlier as well. In that, companies, the customers are getting a little bit more savvy about where they want to spend and what the ethical stance of each company is. And I've always said that if you have a business, your business needs to reflect the community around it. The image of that business, the makeup of your staff base needs to reflect the potential customers, and that's what's been missing for a lot of companies, whether they are employing disabled people or supporting disabled people into self-employment. Where they trip up on the first hurdle is where they've not got their own kind of house in order. But I want to look at the term entrepreneur. Entrepreneur loosely means risk taker. And disabled people, from the moment they wake up in the morning to the moment they go to bed at night, they're taking risks, always have been. They're working sometimes I wake up in the morning and I have a number of painkillers. Some of it's down to old age, but some of it is down to the fact that my joints are affected by my cerebral palsy. So, I have to get on with it. And you mentioned the term resilience earlier as well. Resilience is like, it's in my DNA now. And it's when I fall down, business-wise, I do have to get up. There's this statistic out there around that they say a lot of new businesses collapse within the first year for whatever reason. If you look at the number of disabled people who have started a business and collapsed, those figures are a lot lower because they work hard. And Barclays Bank did some research on this about 15 years ago. Disabled people are 60% less likely to take a sick day than a non-disabled person, because they just get on with it. That drive is always there. Well, I've got a cold, I've got a flu, get back to work. It's this, and you get that when a disabled person is self-employed as well. It just sticks there. And again, companies and investors miss out on that unwritten kind of piece of information, which would really reduce the amount of risk in employing that person or supporting that person in self-employment. So all I would say on my closing comment is, don't be a fool. Get your wallet out, get your checkbook ready, and invest in disabled people, because your chances of return are going to be a lot higher than the non-disabled people, simply because the statistics are there. Google it and you'll see the research.
This is Hardeep. Fantastic, Ammo. Thank you very much. That's a very inspirational close there from you. Really appreciate it. And Rizwan, final thoughts to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Hardeep. So this is Rizwan. So I would say to the companies and investors out there, listen to your customers and the next generation consumers. They want you to be purpose-driven. They want you to be more inclusive. So, join the bandwagon, hop on the bandwagon and start being more inclusive. I would also say, take opportunity, see the opportunities, because if we see people like Jenny and Amo who are so accomplished, people like Jenny and Amo can create so much value for your company. So, you should not neglect or deny that those opportunities exist in the disabled community. And finally, I just wanted to make a small analogy. Like today, again, next generations are demanding that companies focus on what we call ESG, environmental, social impact, and governance. And for example, our family office has started to invest at a seed level in ESG companies. And people say the jury is still not out on ESG. Does it deliver greater returns than non-sustainable companies? And we've actually started to, because we've been patient and resilient, as you mentioned with Hardeep, we've started to see the signals that indeed sustainable companies can deliver, extraordinary returns. And it is still the early days, but we can see the signals are there. And I would say the same to investors. Take a chance on communities and people with disabilities, and be patient, with that exploration. And I'm very certain that eventually you will, just like with ESG, you will see great returns as well. And that is something we're doing with Kaleidoscope, with the recruiting, which is taking time to find its proper fit in the market, and definitely Kaleidoscope is getting there, and we know that they will be very successful in the recruiting of people with disabilities.
Thank you very much for that final thought, Rizwan. And I would like to thank all of you as panelists for this session. I'm just stunned at how fast this 1 hour has gone. I could keep it going and continue to ask questions, but hopefully to the listeners out there, this has given you some insight into disabled entrepreneurship. Jenny, I think your story and your journey and your rawness and your authenticity is amazing. And I thank you so much for being as honest as you have in sharing that. It's really an example for everybody. And I think, Amo, with you, your resilience, and what you've done over the last 30 years, and sort of investing, as you said, almost that 25 million that you generated back into society to help other disabled people, and as you do till today, is phenomenal. So I'm delighted that you were there as a role model. And finally, Rizwan, to you, just to have you believe in us in the way that you have, and to be here today and to allow yourself to speak and to enable other people to listen to you is so powerful, because you are a change maker in your mindset and you are leading the way. And I am delighted that you shared your thoughts with us here today. So thank you. My final thanks, Varija, of course, goes to you and Varija Life and the National Ability Summit for enabling us to have this amazing platform to share ideas. And I think my throwing down the gauntlet for next year is I would like to have an entire day to talk about entrepreneurship, a whole day, because this is just the beginning of the conversation. This is not the end of the conversation. There are many, many other people like Jenny and Amo that are out there that are just waiting to be heard. So thank you, Varija, for giving us this platform.
It's been an absolute honor, Hardeep, and thank you, Rizwan. Thank you, Amo. Thank you, Jenny. I think your insights, something about what you said about sharing your story, you've done that today and you've inspired a lot of people. So I have to thank you for kickstarting the National Ability Summit today. Thank you so much, Hardeep, for moderating this so beautifully.